So, this isn't like a really key event, but the story is just so lame that I wanted to tell it. I was 17 when I lost my virginity. Now, I went to a very, very strict church. And my boyfriend, let's call him Seth. He was 18 and also went to that church. I mean, we weren't supposed to date anyone outside of church, and even if we'd wanted to, most people outside of church, weren't interested in dating us anyway. So he was my first, I'd had one boyfriend, real boyfriend, before him when I was 15, but we never did anything more than just kissing, And, but Seth, we were a little older, and I guess the hormones were raging, as we were typical teenagers in that regard. And of course, it was a major sin to have sex outside of marriage, okay? And it's my theory that one of the reasons why at least people in the UPC tended to get married at young ages is because that was the only way that they could have sex legitimately ever, okay? And they were dying to have sex, That's probably stretching it a bit far. I'm sure that's not the motivation for everyone in that sect. But anyway, so, not only were we not supposed to have sex outside of marriage, as teenagers, they knew our hormones were raging, and so we weren't supposed to do really anything beyond hold hands because, kissing even would lead to sex, And there was a while there was probably about a year or so when I was a teenager where the teenage population in the church was big, in our church in particular. And they decided that they needed to have separate classes for teenage boys and teenage girls. I might have had them on Saturday nights, I don't know, but it was in addition to the regular church services. And we were basically told in the girls' class that no guy wanted used goods. If we lost our virginity before marriage, we wouldn't be able to find a man to marry us, So, anyway, so Seth and I, though, he was not sure that he was that nice of a guy, that good of a guy, and he, unlike the boyfriend I'd had when I was 15, he was, he tried to test the limits, and at first, he really shocked me the first time that he tried to put his hand up my skirt. I was shocked and horrified, and I thought that he must have thought I was a bad girl, for him to have even tried something like that with me. But over time, we probably dated for a year or more. Over time, my hormones were raging too, and what we did felt good, and so I was into it too. I mean, we started off kissing and, went from there slowly, fairly slowly, but I mean, eventually we were doing everything but having sex. We never actually did oral sex that I recall, but I know I did give him some hand jobs eventually, and I mean, we'd been at least halfway undressed with each other. And, but, there were times that at least I, and maybe he did too, would, maybe it would be some really, some sermon that really got to me, and I would feel terrible about the sins I had committed, and I would repent and pray through, and stop for a while, and then we just kept going back to the fooling around, the making out. And so he would come over. We had a Bible study on Wednesday nights, and he'd gotten to where he would come over sometimes, maybe an hour before we were actually going to have to leave to go to church. And he and I would fool around. And, this was at my house, and I mean, Pentecostal boys and girls don't go into each other's, teenagers don't go into each other's rooms, and, the door's shut or anything. That's not going to happen. So you had to find places. And we had, it was a 2-story house, and there was a deck attached to the top story. And the steps, the outside steps up to the deck, about midway down them, there was an area where there were no windows that could look out to where we were. So that became a spot. And on this particular Wednesday, we go back to our spot, and we're fooling around, and at this point we had gotten to where we actually let our genitals touch, that was pretty extreme. And I'm sitting in his lap, and he puts himself inside me just a little, okay? And which, felt incredibly good, and, but we still had not worked up the nerve to, actually, finish, actually have him have intercourse with me. We hadn't gotten to that, so, after fooling around with him just a little bit inside me, we eventually stopped and went to church, He had to leave to go to church, and I was going to leave in just a few minutes to go. And after he left and had driven off, I went into the bathroom, and I had blood on my underwear from where he had apparently gone in just enough to, break the hymen, but he wasn't, inserted, more than a little. But, that was my virginity gone woohoo, you know. Um, I just thought that was a pretty lame way to lose that, wouldn't you think?